Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Transatlantic Call-In Show. This is the show where you get to call in and ask two real live trans people anything and everything you want about trans rights or trans issues in general. So if you are maybe a parent of a newly out trans kid and you have some concerns or questions, this is the place to call. If you feel like we are just these strange perverts or something, give us a call. We'll smack you around a little. Anything you want, we are here to talk about it with regard to trans rights. I am your main host today. My name is Aron Ra. I'm so excited to be here. And today joining me is my lovely co-host. Oh, wrong side.
Rosie. How is everybody doing? Yay. I'm so happy to be back. Absolutely love the show, love the callers, love the community. And I'm just really excited to be here. And I guess my pedigree is the things that I work on. I run the National Trans Survey, the U.S. Trans Survey, yes. And it's a big honor. So yeah, we can definitely get questions about anything. And yes, I am a real live trans woman in the flesh.
Wow. Amazing. No, it's really an honor for us, I would say, because I cite the 2015 survey like a lot on this show. I mean, the data in there is so meaningful and impactful. So like the work that you're doing is like just, I know I talk you up every time. Community loves you. You're great. And we're so excited to have you on again. But yeah, so like, how have you been? How's your week been? I know you're bouncing around to like meetings and conventions and speaking and doing all these things. So like, what's been going on with you?
Oh my goodness, so much. The study is the final leg before we actually announce the launch date, which is going to be mid-October. So we have to do institutional review board process to make sure that the study is like ethically sound and making sure that we're not hurting anybody for asking questions. But also, I've had, a few honors that have come in. So if you can see the little poster at the back, I had Women Who Inspire from Bethesda Magazine. That was exciting. And also, this is the big one. I'm actually going to be speaking at the DNC Women's Leadership Forum.
Oh my goodness.
So that's actually kind of cool. But I don't know how I have time to prep and do all those things while I continue to be on board meetings for, Trans American Veterans Association or committee meetings for the, community lived experience council for the Suicide Prevention Resource Center. It's like, I don't know how I pack it all in. I did go to sleep around like 1:30 last night. So I guess that's just screw sleep, I guess.
Oh my gosh. No, we were just joking before the show. I was like, you've definitely got fuel in your tank that I don't have, because I do like one or two things. I'm like, man, I got to call it quits and just hang out with my cats for a few hours on the couch because I'm already exhausted, but I do one thing in the day. So I definitely admire your ambition and all the things that you do. But with that, I think we have some surveys from last week, a poll from last week that we're going to check out and see how our community responded. So last week's poll was, should hate groups be able to have legal charity status? This is, of course, a reference to the LGB Alliance. I believe their charity status was contested in the UK was what happened. I don't know if it got revoked yet, or that was the story as far as I heard, but I'm sure Katy will be, if she's not in the live chat ready to storm, she will storm in on her next appearance to correct my wrongs. But looking at the results, it looks like we had, yes, anyone should be able to have a charity, which is 9%, which is an interesting take, but maybe we'll get into more. No, but also no one should be able to have charity status. 20%. Wow, a lot of people said that. That kind of surprises me. Or no, hate group should be excluded. 72%. So I did briefly look at the comments to see what people were kind of saying to follow up their answers, and I think maybe what we're looking at is some people, or a lot of people, having objections to the notion of tax-exempt statuses in general, which I could maybe empathize a little bit with that. And if I'm going to be super good faith to our audience, the 9%, maybe your interpretation was that if we let any group have it, a group have it, any group should have it, or something like that, which is sort of, I think, a libertarian like brain rot kind of thing going on, that like, oh, we just got to let anything happen if one thing happens.
Yeah.
I definitely think.
You know what? Oh, go
Or
ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No,
No,
you.
I was gonna say, like, this is a kind of a nuanced conversation, right? Because we talk about status. Now, I'm not too familiar with the UK's charity status more than the American system, which would be the equivalent of like a 501c4 status, which is a tax code. And so, according to the United States, and I don't know if the UK mirrors this. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert in UK politics, but I know a little bit about America, I guess. But so one of the things that is very real about that is the fact that there's a lot of organizations that get C3 status, and they're able to do it. I think the big thing in the United States is, like, should churches get that, even though they don't provide charity and they use their pulpit as a political endeavor, and because if you're political, then you don't get any type of status other than the 501c4, but you don't get tax exemption. So a lot of times, and this is why I'm totally against hate groups having charities or 501c3 status, is because very bad people can use that as a tax shelter for them to get out of taxes to then fund hateful organizations or hateful ideas. So I'm almost in the camp a little bit about no one should have charity status, almost a little, because I think it's been very corrupted over time, and who gets that C3, who's deciding that C3, who's verifying that the C3 is doing what they're supposed to be doing. I don't think there's a lot of oversight. So
Yeah.
I could see why that, but definitely no on hate groups. Kind of on the fence about no charity statuses, but definitely should not have hate groups be able to just go and say, "Oh, I'm a charity. Donate to my Nazi organization tax free." Like,
Right.
what? So that's really what I think about it.
Yeah, I think I largely agree. I mean, I think it's not insanely hard, although there definitely are hurdles to getting a C3 status. And I agree with you. I don't think there's a lot of oversight once that's attained. And, maybe there's a good case for, I think there probably is a good case for, if an organization is providing a lot of utility to the community for providing that sort of status. But I completely agree. I think by and large, it is abused by religious organizations as a way to avoid taxes and to use it as a pulpit to bash on marginalized people most of the time is who that ends up happening. But so that is our last week's poll. And now we've got a new poll queuing up. So fast. Jimmy's also screening while producing, so I'm very impressed with how slick and fast that was. So this next one. If someone harms a doctor who provides trans healthcare, are people like Matt Walsh and Tucker Carlson to blame? Your options are yes, it's what they want. Yes, but they didn't mean that to happen. Depends, comment below. Or no, some people are just bad. So this is coming from, obviously, if you've been plugged into the news, the Boston Children's Hospital received a bomb threat following a lot of social media posts from Matt Walsh and libs of TikTok about, them mutilating children. Tucker Carlson's been claiming that teachers in hospitals are committing sex crimes against children. And this is the kind of rhetoric that they're putting forward. I believe Tucker Carlson even said, it is your moral duty to stop these people no matter what the law says. So they're clearly advancing towards some very violent rhetoric. I think they even showed pictures and names of the hospital staff. So things are getting dangerous. I mean, as we've seen with like the Keppel situation, the radical people online are not afraid to resort to very aggressive, violent tactics and to pursue individuals.
Well, you have the very famous case of not Sean Hannity. Who was the person that was terrible before that Tucker Carlson took his slot? He was terrible. He was the guy that said, "We'll do it live." I forget his name, but he was known. for saying Tiller the baby killer. And there was a doctor who was Dr. Tiller, and no, it wasn't Alex Jones. It was actually mainstream media. Mainstream Fox media host. And that doctor, who was an abortion provider, was murdered brutally by somebody who didn't want this person to kill babe. Bill O'Reilly. Thank you, chat. So Bill O'Reilly did that. And the question did come up is like, is this stochastic terrorism? Did this and I say yes, it absolutely was. And the fact that there wasn't a law put into place after Dr. Tiller was murdered by people who were following Bill O'Reilly's show, and that Bill O'Reilly was like, oh, it wasn't me, it wasn't my fault, is just complete BS. And I hate to say it, but what Matt Walsh and Tucker Carlson are doing, it's not if this happens, it's when it happens. And it's horrific to think about.
Yeah, I absolutely
think they should
agree.
be charged.
Yeah, I take that position too. I mean, I think everyone knows that we always kind of frame these polls. Sometimes the answers are a little bit of a meme. I mean, sometimes we'll put like, no, I like violence or something for your option to say no. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty transparently what they're trying to do is encourage someone who is radical enough to go commit violence against these people to do it. And I wouldn't be surprised to hear, I think Katy said in our group chat, she wouldn't be surprised to see it happen by the end of the year or something. I don't want to stick words in her mouth. I don't know if I would, it's totally possible. I really wouldn't be surprised. To be honest, I don't know really what to expect anymore. Everything is always ramping up and escalating in intensity to where it may be something more spectacular at that point. In the worst kind of way. But yeah, so that is our poll. So I want to remind our audience, if you're watching, go vote. Tell us what you think so we can talk about it next week. So we always love to keep the conversation going with you all. And if you want to participate in the live chat to talk about it, please do that as well. But we have a handful of callers in our call-in queue. So we're going to take those real soon. I want to remind our audience that we also have the phone number in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So if you want to call and talk to us, just dial that number and talk to our screener, and then you can potentially get on live to talk to us. So after rambling so much, let's bring in our first caller today. We've got Nora in Texas. Pronouns are she, her. Nora, you are live on Transatlantic. What's going on?
Hi. So, little bit of backstory. I'm currently in Texas, and I'm 4 months into the transition, and I started the hormones and stuff like that, and I've been looking into like all these rights being taken away from trans people and the politics and all that, and I'm worried about like my medication being taken away and stuff like that. I have a plan to move to a different state, but that's like 2024, and I'm worried about like, should I start hoarding my medicine? Should I wait? What kind of steps should I be taking?
You know, I just want to say that that is a very common fear amongst trans folks who do rely on medication, especially life-saving medication. Congratulations on starting your transition. I'm actually originally from the state of Texas myself. I started my transition in California, however, and am now in the Maryland area, so it's not likely that it's going to happen to me. But I will say that it is scary right now to be trans and to be relying on your medication, especially in a state like Texas. I will say, however, that there has been some attempts by states like Florida that is trying to change the law where Medicaid doesn't cover trans related care. Now, there are rules that we're trying to get passed. There's actually an open comment at protecttranshealth.org to protect these rights and making sure that Florida doesn't have the ability to affect that Medicare coverage for Florida. I will say in the state of Texas, I think you're going to be good all the way until 2024. So if you are trying to move out by then, I think you should be covered. There is a lot of people out there that are supporting and making sure that things like that won't happen. Luckily, you are. I'm guessing you're above the age of 18, so you may not have to worry about that. I would be more concerned about minors losing access to healthcare in the short term before adults. So I'm not saying your anxiety is wrong, but I do understand that anxiety because I myself have that anxiety when Marjorie Taylor Greene tries to pass a bill that bans trans healthcare all the way up until I think the age of 25. So it gets really, really scary to see that. But you also know that those bills only have like 14 co-sponsors in the entirety of the U.S. Congress. So I feel you, I hear you, and I definitely would be worried, but not in the sense that you're going to get your medicines taken away anytime soon from Texas.
Okay.
Yeah. I
remember they were talking. I remember they were talking about trying to detransition adults, and they recently made Truvada illegal in some states, and that's I can see no reason for that other than to harm people. So I mean, it's an outright "we're coming after you" kind of thing.
Yeah, I think I would agree with everything Josie said. I think you're definitely right to be nervous. I know Matt and I have been thinking about moving for a while. We're also very on edge about what the potential future for us in Texas looks like. I do think, like Josie said, just to echo, I'm just going to copy everything she said because she's so right. It's probably going to be safe for adults here. And I think, I don't know whereabouts you're located. You don't need to let us know. But if you're closer to Austin, I know that my provider is so amazing, so outstanding, kick ass. And I have no fears about her, doing her best to be fighting for us until the last, until she literally can't anymore. I think there are providers out there like that, but I don't think it's a terrible idea to consider what alternative methods you can do to take care of yourself in the meantime. I don't want to necessarily, some of these DIY directories, I think they're largely probably safe, but I really don't know. And you really don't know when you're getting stuff like that, exactly what's in it or exactly who it's coming from. So I would definitely want to say, be careful. I wouldn't want you to delay, a dose so that you can hoard your dose. But I do think you have to do what you feel is best for you to get through what is definitely some scary times in American politics. So I think I'm maybe a little bit more pessimistic. I think it's likely to get worse before we see any significant improvement on these fronts. So I do think if you can't get out soon, you should probably brace yourself and take extra steps to be sure you're safe. But yeah, I definitely just want to mostly leave with a sense of empathy because I totally feel that I feel safe in Austin, but if we travel outside of Austin and anyone knows me or Matt, which some people do, it's nerve-wracking to think what could potentially happen, what people could do to us, or what the state could do to us if they really wanted to. It's not a good time.
It's not.
Yeah.
And Nora, I also want to recommend, because Arden said it right too, is talk to your provider about those fears, right? See what your provider will do if the worst case scenario happens. I know in Alabama, when they banned gender affirming care for minors, a lot of those providers actually filled out scripts for those minors all the way for like a year and a half forward as far as refills. So giving a little bit of time to be able to get the laws changed to actually start that treatment once again and getting new prescriptions. So I definitely would talk to your provider. If you have a mental health provider, also talk to them about this so you can express your concern with the actual providers. So worst case scenario, you at least have a plan. And I think that will demystify some of the fears that you have around getting your medication.
Okay. Yeah, Sun Tzu pretty much guaranteed that it's going to get real bad.
Yeah.
I don't want to stoke fear.
They're in there. Well,
I don't want to place an undue amount of fear in you. I think for adults, it's probably going to be safe for a good number of years going forward. But I also don't want to naively suggest that they're not going to come for your meds or come for adults transitioning, because they absolutely will. I think kind of like, at the beginning of COVID, where everyone was saying, be alert, but don't be afraid. That's how we should operate. And I think that largely applies here as well. We should be alert, keeping our eyes out, taking care of our own, making sure the community is safe, but don't be naive. And if it's time to get out and you have the resources or a method, I think, it might not be a terrible idea to consider that.
Absolutely. And community is important, Nora. Like if you're with a community of other trans folks or people in your area, that really does help a lot. Unfortunately, the queer community is very trained on having systematic pressures put upon our community in such a negative way. So there are strategies that our community has already kind of instilled in the process of our own. So I highly recommend talking to other trans women in your area, so you can actually be like, okay, if the worst comes to the worst, what do we do? Because I think that's also our strength as a community, is that we stand together in solidarity with one another.
Absolutely. Yeah. Has this helped your fears, Nora, or maybe made you feel like maybe their fears are still there, but the urgency is a little bit less intense? How's that land with you?
It's given me some ideas on where I can go.
Great.
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that it's all going to be okay and you'll never lose your meds, but America is a country with a long history of issues like this, and I think it is smart to be, not naive about what we're dealing with. So, yeah, I appreciate you calling in and voicing this, because I think there's probably a lot of people in the audience from not just Texas, but other states who are feeling the exact same anxieties that you are. I'm sure this will help a lot of people hearing that.
I think it was the week before last that you had another caller, Jessica or something like that. Her and I basically started the transition probably the same week based on what she was saying. So that was
kind of transition sisters.
Yeah, that's so cute.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name. I'm bad with names, but shout out to you wherever you are.
I think it might have been, Danielle was her name, somebody who said they were just starting transition recently. But to be honest, we get so many names from the callers here that I'm I remember the vague topic. I do remember somebody a couple weeks ago who had just started transition, but the names are where it just gets difficult. But yeah, thank you so much for calling, Nora. I really appreciate this call. I think it definitely will impact a lot of people in the audience.
Oh, I appreciate the chance to call. Thank you.
Yeah,
awesome. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye. Cool. Good. Awesome. I mean, it's definitely a heavy topic, but I think it was a good first call, and maybe ended on an optimistic note, considering the topic.
Yeah, I think so. Even me, being somebody who has a lot of access to different things and, working in, this part of the world, I have a contingency plan ready to move to Canada. If I have to, I think we all kind of think about, if the worst case, which country do I go to? Now, is that most likely going to happen? Probably not. But it's always good in the back of your mind to be proactively knowing that we are a target.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with that. I'm going to remind our audience that if you want to, sorry to go talking about something so heavy to this, if you want to donate $5 or more as a super chat, we will read them all at the end. And if they're relevant to a call and we catch it, we'll read it after the call. So if you want to get in on the conversation, or you want to, express solidarity with Nora or any of the other callers, then that is the way you can do that. But we have more callers on the line, and the next one may or may not be spicy. We're going to see how it goes. I have hopes that it can be productive. So we're going to take Augie from Texas. Pronouns are he, him. Augie, you are live on Transatlantic. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well.
Oh, wow.
What's your topic?
Well, I just wanted to get a better understanding on y'all's position regarding minors being given, gender affirmation surgery and hormone replacement therapy and stuff like that?
Yeah.
No, go ahead,
So,
Aron.
the guidelines for minors are pretty detailed. There's a lot of different steps and degrees of treatment that are available to minors who are expressing that they may or may not be trans. Usually before 12, the most that you're going to get, unless they're going through precocious puberty, is going to be just social transition, just letting them change their name, wear the clothes that make them happy, and identifying themselves to the community as their gender and not their assigned gender. From 12 to 16, you're going to see puberty blockers. Usually puberty blockers are not going to be given for a time longer than 2 years. And if they need to be given for a time longer than 2 years, they will have hormone treatment alongside puberty blockers. There are some side effects of puberty blockers, but they only come after that mark without other hormones being involved. Once you introduce those hormones, you significantly reduce the risk of any bone density issues or cognitive development fears. And then from 16 and up, the evidence seems to suggest that when people are still identifying as trans by that age, is almost a certainty that they're going to be trans for the entirety of their life. At which point, if they have the support of their, parents or guardians or doctor, I support them getting whatever treatment is their team believes is necessary for that individual, whether that's hormones or, you're not going to see almost any doctor perform genital surgery on a minor, but you might see top surgery. That's still it's still very rare, to be honest, but it's not like it doesn't ever happen. But even in those instances, I think those individuals probably had a very unique circumstance where were their doctor saying, hey, I'm really uniquely suffering exponentially with this issue, and that's how they decided to treat it. But yeah, sorry, Josie, I know I ranted a lot there on healthcare.
No, it's fine. And I just wanted to, and then Augie, I'd love to get your response. And another thing about the top surgery thing, because I know that's one of the things that does happen sometimes before 18 years old, more than any of the other ones for sure. A lot of times that top surgery happens because the child was either denied puberty blockers early in their lives, so therefore breast buds developed. So for example, if you are, assigned male at birth and you go through male puberty, you don't develop breast or breast buds. So there's no necessity for you to have top surgery. So it's the same goes for somebody assigned female at birth that goes through puberty blockers and then, small hormone therapy after being on it for a while, then there would be no need for top surgery, right? So I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, but I would love to hear your reaction to all of that and be happy to answer any of the questions that you have in any of that process.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a parent, I got 3 kids, a 10-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old daughter. And I just, I don't know. I have a hard time accepting any kind of outside of, social transitioning. I can understand that. But, any kind of medicine or hormones or even when they're in their teens, how do you figure? They can't sign a contract at that point. A 16-year-old can't get a credit card. How do you figure that they even have the capacity to understand what they're doing?
Well,
can I ask?
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to ask a direct question. So you said you have children. If let's say, and I don't wish this upon any of your children. I'm just saying it as a hypothetical. If one of your children started puberty, let's say at 7 years old, they're not trans or anything. They just started. Right. They started their puberty at 7 years old. Would you seek medical intervention to block that puberty for them to be able to not grow a full beard or have a full boob set by 9 years old? Or would you say, sorry, that's nature, you're going to stay a four foot person because your puberty started early? I just want to make sure, like, philosophically.
I don't know that that's the same, is it? I mean, something like that.
Yeah,
it absolutely is a thing.
Abnormality.
It's
No,
called
that's
You think that's
precocious
similar
puberty.
to trans?
No. So precocious puberty was the reason why puberty blockers even exist. Puberty blockers never existed because it was trans people that made it exist. The reason puberty blockers exist was because of cis kids that were starting puberty at like 6, 7, 8, even 9 years old.
Right.
Way too early, right? And so these medicines
and
are very
legitimate
healthy.
Medical. Right. But with situations like that, there are legitimate medical concerns. I don't know that that's the same as being trans, though.
Can you elaborate on that?
Or I don't know that you can compare them. Of course, my kid, if he started puberty at 7, or one of my daughters or something, yeah, of course I would seek out, some kind of medical intervention if it was going to be detrimental to their health physically. But I don't see how that's similar to trans.
Yes. Okay, Augie, this is great. Actually, this is kind of where I wanted to go, and I'm glad we're all getting there together. So, to avoid potential significant health risks, because earlier you said I wouldn't want to seek medical intervention, but I think I get is kind of generalizing or whatever, and now we're clarifying. If the situation warranted it, you would seek out that treatment, right?
Mm-hmm, of course.
Okay, great. So how are you reacting to, I'm going to give you some stats, right? Now, they're not going to be super detailed. I do have resources that if you want to follow up, I can clarify the specific numbers. But when we're talking about risks, especially for children, we're talking about quality of life, incidents of depression and suicidality, which come with dysphoria, a lot of the time, gender dysphoria. Those are very significant in trans people, such where I'm sure you've heard the number, people love to throw it around, trolls love to throw it around, such that I think it's 40% of trans people have, it's either had suicidal ideation or attempted suicide in their life.
It's 41% they attempted suicide. That comes from the U.S. Trans Survey back in 2015 of 28,000 trans respondents.
Right, and that applies to me. I was in that situation. Especially as a kid, I was miserable. And what we see overwhelmingly in the data is that when kids are affirmed, given access to healthcare in accordance with medical guidelines that fits age-appropriate care, their outcomes are insanely better. They have the same rates of depression and suicidality as all of their peers when they're given access to treatment. Less so. When they're given access.
Less so. So,
So is that
because they have something to live for?
Is suicidality and depression not a significant health risk to you?
It is, but there's a myriad of ways to treat depression, is there not?
But there's actually...
Oh, this is...
Well, sure.
This isn't treating depression.
And I don't know that...
Let me be clear. I just want to be clear about the fact that when we say depression is the outcome of gender dysphoria because they're not congruent with their bodies and they're going through puberty that they don't feel aligned with. And that is what stimulates the depression. So gender dysphoria has been a proven method to treat, gender affirming care has been a proven scientifically to treat and alleviate gender dysphoria, which scientifically, if you do that, you'll see a drop of 9 times in suicidality. And there was a study that just recently came out from Stanford that actually said that if children start their transitions in adolescence, then they're 222% less likely to have some form of mental health issue. So the quality of life goes up quite a bit. Also, I would like to mention as well is if you start your transition earlier in your life. Look, I started my transition at 34 years old. I had to get facial feminization surgery so I could actually feel a little bit more comfortable with my face. But if I actually had access to puberty blockers and transitional care, my voice wouldn't have deepened and I wouldn't have had to do any type of facial feminization surgery, which obviously there's a risk to any type of surgery, and it would have been a much better and I wouldn't have been as tall. So when we talk about that treatment, it's very important because it can in the long term hurt somebody if they don't get the care that they need. And we're not talking about just giving this stuff out like Skittles either, right? There are massive standards of care that need to be followed. For example, for a minor, it's a year that you're supposed to be followed by a pediatric psychologist before they even put you on puberty blockers. Now, if you are a father of like a 7-year-old, if you're a father of a 7-year-old, you don't even need to wait a full year before you start puberty blockers. You get them right away. So the medicine is actually very, very safe and effective, and we want to make sure that children are safe too. We don't want to hurt children either. I don't think anybody here wants to hurt children. And we just know that the science proves that if we intervene and when children at an early age see that they're not what they were born as far as like their assignment at birth. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess that's kind of a question. So you say, okay, this is what the science shows. Do we have enough long-term studies to really make that determination that it's not just a Band-Aid, that we're not just making them feel better at that moment, but then later on in life, they're going to still be depressed and kill themselves?
Yeah,
Because
so actually there is good data on this. There actually is good data on this, Augie. Yeah, so actually the 2015 survey, the older one that Josie is working on the updated version of, reported that of people who transitioned, I think it was only 6% said they regretted transition. And of that number, only 0.5% of the overall total number of people surveyed reported that the reason they detransitioned was because it was right for them or wasn't right for them. They regretted it. The other people who had regrets about transition was because it impacted their life so negatively because people were bigoted towards them, not because they were like, oh, I've mutilated my body, I'm so much worse. No. Yeah. Overwhelmingly, when people report that they feel trans by the time they're a teen, that is almost certainly going to be a lifelong thing that they're going to have to deal with. And at that point, denying them care, I think is where the real harm comes in. Because when we have this conversation, what happens a lot is people go, well, what would happen if you transition and then you regret it? How awful would that be? Right? And I agree. If you are not trans,
from what I've seen,
hold on, I want to finish. Augie, if I can finish. I'm sorry. I do want to give you a chance to jump in here. I just want to finish this point because it's important. Right? I
go ahead.
Agree with you. It would be really bad if I was not trans and I took, got trans healthcare and then it made me feel worse, right? That would be horrible. But what you're ignoring when we talk about that point is that is maybe at most, I think I've seen from data across multiple studies, 2% of trans people. That means you're denying 98% of trans people the medically necessary healthcare that they need because there's a chance that they might regret it. But if we're going to be consistent about that, we're going to have to ban so many medical procedures. Transition is extremely reliable. A lot of medicine results in regret. Exactly.
Yeah, sorry, you're always going to have the people that, there's always going to be that percentage that, is going to regret it, and that's not even just a trans issue. But I think my last thought would be, as a father, and really trying to look at this objectively. I'm an atheist. I'm not some Christian bigot or anything like that. I think the slippery slope with all of this comes down to, like you were saying earlier about how, if I hadn't gone through male puberty, then, maybe it'd be easier to pass, or maybe, you'd have less dysphoria. Well, then you're getting into like latency stage, like early childhood. And I think that's where people have a lot of issues, including myself, is trying to push this onto small children, because the
Push.
truth is, I have nothing against trans people either, like, but when kids come into when kids come into it, and you're looking at these children that I just don't feel like they have the capacity to even consent to something like that.
Sure. If I can level with you, Augie, I appreciate the concern that you have as a parent for not wanting to put your kid in a bad situation, right? I do. I really empathize with that. I think it's important. But I am a little concerned about, like, the way you frame this makes me think that maybe some of the media you're consuming is questionable, because you're talking about pushing it on kids. And literally nobody is pushing it on kids. The most that people are doing is letting kids know that, hey, this is a thing that exists, and if you feel this way, there's something we can do about it. And the pathway is going to be one that doesn't just put them on hormones and ship them off like, good luck, now you're getting drugs. No, it's not like that. The pathway is one that gives kids the opportunity to, like, again, with those hormones, a 2-year window. Those kids have a 2-year window to experience being a girl in their life and to make an informed decision on, I like my life now, I want it to continue going in this direction, or this has actually been bad for me, I want to stop. And maybe they're going to stop because of, like, the data we said earlier, because they got, bullied. And it was really terrible for them. And down the road,
you don't think there could be any long-term effects for taking puberty blockers? Like, you don't think that...
There was good data on this. We've already talked about this.
Puberty? Yeah.
So
this is
we've
what
already
I want to
talked
say.
about this.
I want to go back, right? And the fact is, do you think that if kids were getting puberty blockers when they were cis kids, and now they are already in their 60s and 50s, these kids have been getting, they've already grown up, they've had children, they've already been able to live a large portion of their lives and had puberty blockers. If you believe that puberty blockers would have been dangerous, why are we just hearing about it now with trans people? We should have been hearing about negative effects of puberty blockers for over 2 decades or 3 decades, since it's been available to most cis people with precocious puberty. And it's not a small number, right? I feel that a lot of this and is coming from the newness of it. The fact that there's a lot of people that are coming out as trans right now, and it can be a little shocking, right? Because look, I'm 34 years old. I grew up in Texas. My not to call out my mom, but the first time I ever got introduced to a trans person, she called her a T-slur, right? Like, and so for me, it's like, it wasn't, when I was younger, probably when you were younger, it wasn't a very acceptable thing to be trans. And I just want the point, and I want you to do just a tiny bit of research. I'm going to give you 2 points. First, I want you to do research on the propensity of left-handedness. So go in and look at a graph from people who had who were left-handed from the late 1800s to now. And what you will see is, during that time, you will see that there was only 2% of people who were left-handed, right? Because during that time, being left-handed was seen as a degeneracy, or that you were possessed by the devil. So as soon as that went away, then all of a sudden that number spikes up and sticks at 18%, and then it stays there. The same is happening right now with trans people. For the first time, it's been okay to come out as a transhuman, so that is why more people are doing it. It's not that there's been more in history, it's just the first time that we've been able to come out in history. And another thing I want you to take a look at as well is look at the regret rates of nose surgeries and knee surgeries versus regret rates of bottom surgeries and gender-affirming surgeries. By far, people have a lower regret rate of getting a bottom surgery or some form of gender-affirming surgery than people who need medical necessary knee surgeries, because people are regretting those more than they are the bottom surgery. So when we look at the preponderance of evidence, we can see that people actually, quality of life is increased, and that regret rates are extremely low. And we also have the efficacy of long-term people living their lives with puberty blockers and living completely fair and wonderful lives, completely able to reprocreate and do all those things that are cis, obviously. But then the trans people are also fine as well. So I just want you to take a look at those things, because I think you are thinking in the right way, and I think you are just a father that is concerned. But just remember that it can be a very hard thing if your child, right, is like, hey, maybe I do want to be trans. Like, you need to ask yourself, I'm not saying to do this with your kid, but I want you to do the thought experiment. What if one of my kids told me I was trans? How would you internally react to that? And then think about what that means for your child and what they think of you, right? If you were to react in that way. Does that make sense?
It looks like I think he must have just dropped or something. I don't know if it was on his end or ours, but I hope you're still listening, Augie. But I
hope
think
so too.
That was, yeah, and I do want to say quickly before we move on that if you're still watching, Augie, I appreciated this call. I think it got a little heated, but it was actually, I think you came from a good faith position, and when we presented you with evidence, you didn't fluff it off and say, well, I don't care about that. You actually internalized it. So I really appreciate that, and I hope that this conversation can impact you or somebody in the audience in a positive way, because I think that was a fruitful conversation, even if it gets a little heated. But yeah, that was good. I appreciated that call. Yeah, me too. So we've got 3 more callers on the line. We're going to take number 6 first, but then there's 2 that could be a little spicier. So if you're on the line, we're going to try to get to all of you. So please hold tight. But for now, we're going to pull in Liam from Nevada. Pronouns are he, him. Oh, hey, Liam. What's going on?
Hi.
Hi. What's going on?
So I want to ask about advocating for trans rights in as like a student.
Ooh, yeah, that's a really interesting question. Do you have thoughts, Josie?
Yeah. So
I want to hear the question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Liam. Yeah, sorry. Expand. I'm sorry. I'm jumping the gun. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I should give some background first, though. So.
Okay.
I go to like a conservative Christian school. My parents don't care about the religion. It's just for the education, and it's not like I'm gonna be there forever. It's probably like maybe the last year that I'm gonna actually like be there, and it's pretty transphobic. Like it's not great with that. And I love the second piece of background information is that like I love learning. It's it's something that I just love to do. I just love to like soak up information. So I did some research from some actual like scientists and stuff on like trans people, and found trans people, they're valid. You know, the brain thing is really interesting. But the teachers at my school are often very ignorant and very bigoted about this, and I just find it hard not to speak up, but I'm afraid that if I do, I don't really fear the consequences of it. I just fear that I'm going to be like, what's the term, like mansplaining, like trans people, and get it wrong.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I see that as a significant issue. To be honest, I think if what you're saying is true and the environment is really that toxic, I think it sounds like you've already done some good research. I think any dissenting voice could be really impactful in the classroom. And I think it's brave of you to say you're not afraid of the consequences. And I would maybe, depending on your age, because I'm not trying to be condescending, but you sound younger. I don't want you to get yourself in a bad position with your school board. But you could have a significant impact on someone else sitting in your classroom if the teacher says something transphobic and you say, actually, that's not true. And, you know, whatever the fallout from that is, that could be really meaningful to another kid who's maybe in the closet that's sitting in the classroom going, wow, you know, my whole life I've been beating myself up because I've been hearing the teacher say that, but I heard somebody say something different. That kind of thing has a huge impact on people. Not that I'm trying to, you know, radicalize the kid to be antagonistic towards their teachers, but I do think you can have a healthy, respectful pushback against your teachers if they're saying transphobic things in the classroom. But Josie, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, Liam, first, thank you for, having the ability to like see this. When I was in school, I didn't have an environment that allowed me to like see who I was. So first, thank you for being there for people and asking this question thoughtfully about, hey, what about my teachers that have educational places of power that they could be spreading hateful, hurtful things? So, first, I will reiterate safety first. We don't want you to, get expelled, kicked out, in any way, any of those things. Also, if somebody says something transphobic, maybe you don't want to stand up and talk there. Maybe you can pull the teacher aside and say, hey, this hurt me, or hey, like, I think this could be insensitive. And don't think of it as mansplaining. I'm just going to say definitionally what that is like you're trying to talk over a woman and you are a male-bodied person. So like, I don't think that's the case. I think that standing on your position should never be something that you're ashamed of. It should never be something that you're afraid of doing. You should confidently stand on your conviction and your values, and say, hey, this is what I believe. Like you said, you're a student, right? You're learning, you're absorbing everything you can. And that's perfect attitude to have at your age, to say, hey, look, I'm going to observe the world around me. I'm going to see how it shows up for me, and I'm going to figure out what best strategies I can do to interact with that world. When you get older, it gets a little bit easier to stand up and say, hey, I'm going to stand up for this thing, or I'm going to do this thing, within reason, of course. But I just want to, say, maybe it's going and finding a community, a queer community maybe it's not allowed in your school, but maybe you can say, hey, let's start an after school thing, and like, and let's get everybody who feels comfortable in this space to be here. Creating that community of safety is also very important, especially when you want to be a good ally and a good friend to the community of those that are marginalized. But I think you're awesome. I think you're great. I think that your head's in the right place of trying to protect your peers, as well as yourself, to make sure that, we have a better world. And, Liam, I'm not going to guess your age, but it's very hopeful to talk to you, to know that this is what the things that we're thinking about, instead of just like, hey, there's a trans kid, like, hey, there's students that care about their trans peers. And that's very uplifting. And I thank you for that. Do you have any other specific questions or anything you want to say about any of that?
Well, I thank you. That really means a lot. I just wanted to add a quick note. This isn't like a major question or anything, but I was you obviously know the documentary, but it's been everywhere, but documentary, quotation marks. Matt Walsh.
Oh gosh.
What is yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I was a couple months back, I saw the trailer for that. I was like, oh, I didn't know who Matt Walsh was, right? I was thinking, oh, it's just this guy, whatever, he's asking some feminists what they think a woman is. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then it got to the point of the part of the trailer where he was interviewing like the ex-trans person, and I saw that, and I was like, oh. And I thought it was just actually going to be like respectful interviews. And then I saw that, and I was like, come on.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything respectful or honest about Matt Walsh's approach to talking about trans issues, but it is. I empathize with the frustration there for sure. Well, if that's it, Liam, I think we might move on and take some new calls, but I really appreciate your call. I think I totally agree with Josie. The kids in my high school were not thinking like you, so I think you could do a lot of good with the mindset you've got.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks for taking my call.
Awesome. Yep. Bye. Have a good one. Bye. Okay.
A little bit of hopium. I love hopium. The youth.
Yes, I know. So positive. I almost let that call wait till the end, because the others are look like they could get spicy again. And I was like, oh, it'd be nice to end on a positive note, but I'm glad we took Liam when we did. All right.
Yeah.
So coming up next, this one might get interesting. Let's talk to Elizabeth in North Carolina. Pronouns are she, her. Elizabeth, what's going on?
Hey.
Oh, hi. Sorry, gotta turn up my YouTube. I had y'all in the background there. Hi.
No
So glad to be on the show again. And my thought was about I guess my central question is about what is at the heart of what it means to be transgender, particularly in the sense that what we used to call, if I may use an archaic term, transsexual, where you're in a binary sense, transition from one of two genders to the other gender. And I guess I put it that way because one of the things that has triggered me to think more about this is the number of people who've started identifying within the trans community as being non-binary, which I'm in no way trying to invalidate that experience. To the contrary, it makes me question how does that phenomenon then affect the context in which people who are making a binary choice in the trans community, how is that affected? And what does, if we go back to, somebody was talking earlier about like the brain studies, to have a female brain, I've seen different people hypothesize, and it's been, 25, 30 years since they first discovered that, the whole BSTC and everything. What does it mean to have a brain of one of the quote-unquote two traditional genders or a brain of the other one? Does it mean that you require the hormones? Is it that you need to fulfill a certain social place in society? I've seen some people say that they equate it with like having phantom limb syndrome, and they're like, well, no, I need to have a particular set of, pardon my language, body parts. And that one in particular, I guess, this never really struck with me because the number of people who transition and do not have quote unquote all, people don't feel the need to have every surgery just because it's out there and available, and yet still feel that they have made a successful transition and they experience that difference in their life. But I guess I'm y'all's thoughts as well as like any science that y'all have seen on this.
Yeah.
Well,
you want me to go first, Arden? Or you go first? Go ahead.
I just have one thought I want to add. I have more, but one quick thing is kind of on this notion of pink blue brains. While it is certainly interesting, and I think there's a lot of valuable information and insight to be gained from that, I think it's important to note that when we're looking at those graphs, what we'll often see is that in the areas being indicated, you're going to see two bars. It's like a box with bars that are like this. And you're going to notice that there's a chunk of overlap there. And the reason for that is because human biology is very varied, right? You can have a cis man who's a masculine man who might present gray matter in that region of their brain that looks like a quote unquote female brain. But I think it's important to make sure that we're not, it's kind of a misnomer to say that a trans person has a female brain, in my opinion. It may be the case that your gray matter looks more in that area like a cis woman's, but I don't know if it's fair to say that that's a female brain. I think brains in biology and parts occur on spectrums with a lot of variation. And so I don't really adhere to this notion of like, oh, non-binary people conflict with this notion of a female brain, because I don't think a female brain exists in the first place. I think brains exist on a spectrum of possibilities, and that would include, more female-looking brains and more male-looking brains, and brains that are probably more ambiguous. But sorry. Anyway, Josie, you can go.
Yeah, I just want to identify the way that your explanation, because I was listening intently when you're talking about the time and the evolution of our language, right? I want to start there, from transsexualism to transgenderism, right? Or transgender versus transsexual, whatever. And what that was back in older times was there was a big push for assimilation, and so a lot of people were like, you have to be transsexual so you could actually get the body parts that match the people that are walking around you that are cis, so you don't get beaten and killed in the streets. Like, it is as fundamental as that, right? Because culture in the past, especially trans female culture in particular, was very centralized around passing, making sure your makeup looks good, making sure your hair looks feminine, making sure all of these feminine qualities are exemplified and exaggerated, because that was a matter of life and death. So transition used to be highly medicalized, because the medicalization process used to be a catalyst to help somebody assimilate into like heteronormative culture. Now, as the evolution continued to grow, and then we realized, wait, you don't have to have surgeries to be a trans person, right? Like, you don't have to, have vaginoplasty or phalloplasty or whatever gender affirming surgeries you need to be valid as the gender that you are. So that's why transgender became more of a catch-all term that includes people who consider themselves transsexuals, right? Because there are older people who consider themselves transsexuals because that's what they called themselves for decades before, the more modern term of trans. And so I just want to make sure, and going back to that brain stuff, right? All, like you said it yourself, right? 20, 30 years, right? You're talking about a long time ago these studies were, because transness used to be so highly medicalized that people were looking for that trans gene or the trans thing that makes people trans to kind of validate their identity. And Arden's completely right. Like, it's a complete scatterplot almost of like overlap that happens, and it just isn't a reliable way to check it. Just like chromosomes aren't a reliable way to check it, right? Because when's the last time who somebody that that got a genetic DNA swab, if they didn't have like a genetic abnormality, like, right, if they had some type of genetic dysfunction in their body, is the only time anybody gets their chromosomes checked, right? So there is no like medical way to do it. So what we do is we rely on people's internal identities of who they feel and who they are, right, to kind of justify somebody's transness. Nobody needs to qualify to be trans. All they have to be is like, hey, I'm not a guy, so therefore I feel more comfortable as a woman, so therefore I'm trans. And I was trans before I got one surgery. I was trans before I got one hormone. So I think that separating the identity from the medicalization of transness may help with that disconnect that you were talking about in this call. So I'd love to hear your response to that.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm one of the older ones. I don't know that I had used the term for decades, but when I was first transitioning, transsexual was the accepted term, and transgender was this sort of new term that people were kind of playing around with. That was like, well, maybe this makes us sound less like it's about like a fetish or it's a sexual choice, and it's more about an identity that we feel the need to take on in order to feel that we are mentally, socially, and if Arden will forgive me for using this term, spiritually in connection with who we're meant to be in our place in the world and society as a whole. So one thing I want to ask about before I forget is you mentioned about an overlap, and I haven't looked at the brain studies in a long time, but the ones that I remember, there is, although as you say in nature there's always the exceptions to the rule and certainly the variance, but it is more or less a bimodal distribution, that you have brains that fall within a certain range on one end of the spectrum, or you have brains that more so fall in a range on another end of the spectrum. Now, if if there have been studies since then, like you say, that show that there's a lot more overlap, that's something I'm really curious to see, because it's just not been my experience.
I have a quick question for you. Just real quick. What does that prove for you if that was the case? Like, I'm very curious about, you're talking about a study that was a while back. So I want to know why that is so interesting to you and what the impact of that would mean for our future. Let's say it was your way. Let's say it was like, you know what, maybe there isn't, if I know it, but there is. But let's say there wasn't. What would that provide for you? What evidence, what comfort, what would that make you feel better? I don't understand why, because I know a lot of people kind of like huddle next to some of those studies and it's like, but there's different brains, right? People have different brains. So I want to know why that is so critical for this discussion.
It's not, I don't think of it as my way. It's not something I'm trying to defend. If it's another way, then that's why I asked. I want to have that information, because I'm trying to make, this is my life. I'm trying to make, and have been trying to make the best decisions that I can. And, unlike the information that a previous caller has been fed by the media, like trans care is certainly not something that I've ever found pushed on anybody. It's something that you really have to kind of like fight for, and to really, at a minimum, advocate very strongly to get any sort of care. And with that being the case, I want to make sure that I'm doing quote unquote my own research and giving myself the best care. I've been waiting for, when those studies came out in the 90s or whenever it was after that I was waiting to see, like, okay, but what does that mean? If there are male brains and there are female brains, what does that mean? Do male brains demand testosterone or else they feel bad? And female brains demand estrogen or else they feel bad? Or does it some sort of social thing where, male brains demand to be around to socialize with men, and female brains demand to socialize with women and act like those other groups, whatever they're doing? Because what it means to be a man or a woman has significantly changed over time in a way that I don't think we could just chalk up to biological evolution. It's a social evolution that we see even in one human lifetime. What those words mean changes significantly. So I'm just trying to figure out, I'm just trying to inform myself so I can do the best to care for myself, if that makes sense.
Sure. I think, to your point, I definitely agree that, these things change radically over time. And it is interesting to sit here and speculate, like what really is the heart of being a woman? Because, clearly for a lot of time, we thought it was people who were assigned female at birth were the people, that's what a woman was. And now we're realizing, okay, maybe it's not quite exactly that. Like, I think probably you could say the majority of people who are women are probably assigned female at birth, but it's clearly not ubiquitous. So it is interesting to have these conversations. I mean, I saw a Twitter thread today of news reports going back to like 1880, almost every decade of, people saying today's men are more effeminate than ever. They're failing at being men. And I think this is a tale as old as time. We've been noticing gender roles changing and getting mad about it. Why is it not like what I was growing up or whatever? And it is interesting to think about, but I guess, I don't know. I'm struggling to see what we're trying. Like, I appreciate, you're trying to inform yourself and I also like the truth. It's nice to, know why am I trans? What is it that caused me to be trans and to want to seek out hormones? And it's really hard to say. I think brains and humans are again, just like extremely variable. And this is something that this part of it, why people are trans, is not something that science has really caught up to yet, at least in any meaningful capacity. But I guess I'm just struggling to know.
Yeah. So I'm gonna liken it. Yeah, I'm gonna liken it to like finding the gauging, right? Like it's the idea that we need to finding out to make sure that people are valid who they say they are, some way to like prove it in like science in some way. And I always think about it like as far as like cis people are concerned. Like we don't ask for the brains in the chromosomes of somebody who say they're like cis, they're born male, they are a man. We're not sitting there and say, prove it to me that you're a man, right? And I feel like there's a little bit of internalization there, because I had it myself when I first came out as trans myself. I'm like, am I really trans? I think a lot of trans people have that thought in the back of their head because of the society which we are raised, right? It's like, maybe there's something that can prove that I'm trans, or maybe there's something that can prove that I'm not trans. And I think that's just the natural instinct of humanity to kind of like figure out, why am I the way that I am? Why, it's like the philosophical grand questions we ask at the sky, right? It's like, why does the grass grow? Like, it's kind of like, why is the way the world that it is? And I just want to also challenge the fact too, that we have been speaking strictly in binary terms, right? So the idea of a non-binary person, like there is no modality that shows this is what a non-binary person looks like versus what societal construction of what a female is supposed to look like or what a male is supposed to look like. But when you talk about the non-binary person, like they can be who they are, right? And there's nothing we're going to be able to find in science to say, oh yes, this is the non-binary person, this is the XXX chromosome, and this is what a non-binary person is, this is the non-binary size brain. We're just never going to find it. And I think that once we're able to let go of the, I guess, mysteries of the world that say, okay, this is why I was trans. I don't know why I'm trans other than I am. And I think, and I take a lot of solace in the ability to say, I am a woman and I am trans. And, it's one of those things that I internally am able to be confident in, because nobody's going to be able to disprove that, right? Nobody's going to be able to disprove that because it is my reality, and it is your reality, Elizabeth, that you are a woman, and nobody's going to stop you from being that. And so I think that it's human nature to try to find the proof, because it's much easier to tell somebody that doesn't believe in trans stuff to say, hey, look, this is the certificate that says that I'm trans. See, my brain is this size, so therefore I am trans. So you can stop being bigoted to me. I got bad news for you, Elizabeth. Didn't matter if you did have that paper, they would still be bigoted to you. And so I think that's what the internal search is for. And I say, it's interesting science. I think it's interesting, just like any other like study that comes out. It's like, ooh, that's an interesting finding, but nothing's definitive. And there's never going to be anything that proves why we're trans or why we're not trans. So all we can do is just kind of live with it and be who we are and thrive. I know that's not a great answer, and I'm going to be punting it a little, but I'm just sobering reality of the science behind trans and finding out why.
Yeah, I've seen that, what you're calling internalization. I've seen that in a lot of trans folks, and there have been times in my transition, sure, when I've experienced that as well, but I feel like we're kind of like straying off of like my original question here, which is not about the why or the proving the validity, but is almost like the opposite, if you will, because what I'm asking is, when I transitioned, it was under this sort of this framework, this rubric, as you say, more medicalized, where the framework is that there are male brains and there are female brains, and if you have one or the other, regardless of how you were assigned at birth, then you need to go into that path. And when I met my first non-binary person, probably 15 years ago or so, that was they didn't even call it they called it genderqueer at the time. They didn't even call it non-binary. And at the time I was like, well, I wonder what that is. Is it that they have a brain that's more in the middle? Or is it that this is this a choice that, or I want to say choice, is this an experience that is outside of something that's like strictly medical? And while I don't want to lump all people who are non-binary into one group, what the media that I'm consuming from folks who are non-binary tends to be that what they are doing is more of a reaction to, is more of a social reaction that they're doing, and is not something that they identify with some kind of medical condition, as certainly we would have done, 20 years ago or so when I was looking at transitioning. So my thought then is, if this is the direction that society, or certainly that trans society, if you will, is going, that identifying in non-binary ways is like the future of trans. Because I don't know if people outside the trans community realize this, and I don't know that this is every trans community, but the trans communities that I find myself in, the queer communities I find myself in, at some point, non-binary in the last 10 years ago, the balance switched, and there's way more people. I don't know about way. Yeah, there's way more people that
I got a question.
Identify.
Do you feel
non-binary?
Do you feel less valid as a trans-binary woman because non-binary people exist? Like, I'm asking you directly, because I don't feel less valid because a non-binary person exists, and I'm a binary trans woman with severe gender dysphoria.
Yeah, I don't know what validity has to do with it. I'm talking about what options a person has for their treatment, given that they, the options were limited when I first transitioned. I transitioned within a particular framework. That framework's not the case nowadays, and so I'm trying to come back and re-question myself. I'm not trying to re-emphasize decisions I already made 20 years ago. I'm trying to actually question, deconstruct ideas that I've carried with me based on frameworks that I was given 20 years ago.
Yeah. So my thoughts on that, you keep talking about these frameworks that you're given. The issue is that science is always learning and always evolving. And at one point, we may have thought there's not a lot of data on this. We do see that there may be these rates of brain matter in certain areas being correlated with being trans people, but there's not really anything conclusive. If they were being honestly skeptical, there was nothing they could have drawn from that really at that time, other than maybe this is related to being trans, but we don't really know for sure. And now the science has evolved to where we're saying this is possibly related, but it's not really useful in any meaningful way. And what's far more useful is that trans people, the most reliable way to determine whether someone is trans is their say-so. I feel trans. And when somebody does feel trans, almost certainly giving them access to gender-affirming medical care, or changing of documents or affirmation from their community, those are the things that most significantly improve their quality of life. I think what you're just noticing is that science learns more and science changes, as opposed to I know you're I think you told us you're Catholic before. I'm not trying to bash on you personally, but religion tends to have an approach of, we have a Bible and that is the truth and that doesn't change. Whereas science takes an approach of, we have this set of data to work with right now. We can make the best educated decision with this set of data and evidence. And then as we've gotten more data and evidence, we're able to make a better, more reliable predictions about what things we can do to help trans people, because we found, while this is maybe an interesting fact that trans people might have brains correlated with their, the gender that they are and not their assigned sex, it's not really meaningful in any way. And what's actually more meaningful and impactful for trans people and trans community is being taken at their say-so and given access to affirming care. I don't know, I guess, what else, if that answers your question, or if that was also not what you were asking, because in which case, then I really have no idea what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, no, I'm flattered you remember that I'm Catholic, but it's funny that you say that, because in my mind, it has more to do with maybe being a software developer, where I'm like, you have outcomes based on things that are programmed into a thinking machine, and thinking of myself in those terms, like I'm a biological thinking machine. I want to know what's in the kernel, if you will, that produces this sort of this thought in my head that I'm a woman, and how do I satisfy whatever is at the core of that need? I want to get to I'm trying to question first principles and get down to what's at the core of this and how do I satisfy that, so I'm not sort of chasing false needs. Let me put it this way. Let's say that it's just that my brain craves estrogen. 20 years ago, I could not have just said, just give me the estrogen, I'm not going to transition. A person could actually do that nowadays. And that's very terrifying for me to imagine. I don't even know that I would call it a detransition, but post-transition. But like those sorts of options are open nowadays. And it seems to me like science at some point just gave up on trying to figure out what's at the core of things and said, gender is like your artistic expression. Just do what you feel.
Well, okay, we're gonna have to wrap up this call, so maybe you can call back next week to continue this conversation. But I do want to say that I don't think what science is saying is gender is just what you feel. It's artistic expression. Just throw it at the wall and see what sticks. That's not at all what's happening. They're saying the most reliable way to determine if someone is trans, so far as we have currently, is their say-so, their self-report. And from that information, once we know someone is trans, these are the things that help them. Giving them access to the affirming care that they want, and giving them access to documents in an affirming community. I guess I'm not really sure.
I have a really quick thing. There are more than one ways to treat type of things. So like, for example, like there are different ways you treat burns. There's different ways that you treat depression. There are different ways that you treat, like some people get therapy to handle their depression. Some people need meds to handle their depression. Some people need clinical oversight for to manage their depression. So everybody's transition is different, just like everybody's mental health needs or anybody's own medical needs. Like the way that Arden, myself, and yourself may all have very different ways that we treat our transition, but none of those are more right than the other. What we've realized is that the trans community is more vibrant than the way that science used to think, which it was like this track or this track. We need to put you in this track and we need to make you have it this way. But as we can know with, I'm going to use pregnancy as an example because I think that's a good example, where like hospitalization and having a pregnancy and having a baby on a gurney on your back may not work as well for a woman who wants to have a standing birth or somebody who wants to have a water birth. But we're not going to tell any of those women that the way that they're having their baby is wrong or that science doesn't care because they're having a underwater birth. So I think that what we have is just different levels of treatment for other people's needs, and all of those treatments for those needs are valid.
Yeah, I think science is realizing that respecting people's autonomy is of the utmost importance. You know, we don't know why someone is trans. We don't know necessarily better than that individual what their, ideal outcome for transition is going to be. So we follow the best evidence that we have, and we leave it to them to decide the direction they want to take their transition with the, aid of medical professionals who have done their work, and they can provide them that care. But again, we do have to wrap up. So I'll let you get in like a little quick goodbye, or you totally fucked up and you didn't answer my question at all, whatever you need to get out of your system. And then you can call back next week to finish it or whatever.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I appreciate the work that y'all doing, and I look forward to talking to you again. I got to go to class, and y'all got a show to do. Keep up the great work. Take care. Bye.
Bye. I mean, it definitely is an interesting call. We can spend a lot of time thinking about the why. I also had thoughts about the use of transsexual, because I don't agree with the notion that transsexual, I think I agree with her that it used to be used in a way where transsexual implied a binary that you were moving across. But I think if we're being more accurate to the etymology, in my opinion, transsexual means changing your physical sex characteristics, which that could be a whole conversation if someone wants to call in. Yeah. Although I would say I use trans in basic speech, I think it'd be more accurate to call myself a transsexual because that's what I've done. I haven't changed my gender. I've changed my sex characteristics.
But your gender's always been the same.
My gender's always been the same. But that is a totally different talk. And we have one more call that might also be interesting and take some time. So this is going to be the last call for the day. I see there's someone else on the line and we're not going to be able to reach you. I'm so sorry. But for the last call today, we're going to talk to Steven in Washington. Pronouns are he, him. Steven, what's going on? Hello.
Sabrina, she, her, Canada.
Yep.
Sabrina.
We're talking.
Yes.
Oh, this is Steven in Washington. We got the wrong moniker up, but hey, are you there?
Okay, sorry. Hey, Steven, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
What's going on?
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to call in. I've been getting into some super nerdy stuff lately, and I found a couple of different groups of people that are trying to find ways to make synthetic and endogenous estrogen kind of DIY at home. And I was curious if you thought it would be more productive to kind of pursue those avenues to ensure that people can get these drugs and medications that they need, or if it's better to just put all of my efforts behind kind of fighting in the political realm to ensure that people's access isn't taken away in the first place.
Man, what a good question. I love this question. And particularly, I love this question because I don't know if I have a satisfying answer, and I feel like I'm kind of two minds about it, which those are the kind of questions that I think can spur some really interesting conversation, right? Because on one hand, I think there are significant risks to DIY hormones, and I want, obviously, of the utmost importance is the safety and health and well-being of my trans siblings, right? But that said, there are significant institutional barriers for some people accessing the medical care that they need, or getting it, covered. If people are low income, they don't have the money to even pay their copay. If they're in Florida and Medicaid starts not covering hormones for that purpose, those people could be really at risk. And I don't think it's my place at all to tell them you shouldn't do DIY because there are health risks when those people are struggling to get access to the safe hormones because we put them behind these institutional barriers and these economic barriers. I feel like my gut is that I would rather the safe hormones be made accessible to everyone for no cost whatsoever, right? My ideal fantasy world, I would love to have, universal single payer healthcare, and nobody has to pay for their hormones, and you all just get the safe hormones, no questions asked. Well, no, maybe not no questions asked, but basically no institutional hurdles. But I do think it's maybe a concern that in the near future, trans people might be relying on DIY production in larger numbers than we've seen before. And who am I to tell people, you shouldn't pursue that because there are potential risks. It makes me nervous that people would take advantage of the community, but I don't know if I have a satisfying answer. But sorry, Josie, I see you want to jump in.
Yeah, I have I guess some schools of thought on this. Because if you think about it, like creating our own synthetic hormones and doing all of that is a place we don't want to be. Like, could you imagine if the United States was like, we need to start putting insulin in and start making our own insulin because it was almost getting to that point because it was so expensive. But it would be very dangerous in a lot of ways because of that, because there's a lot of medical oversight and things of that nature. So I always push trans people to try to use the medical care that they have available around them, because it will first generate a demand. So then doctors are like, hey, these people need this stuff, so we want to be able to provide it. So therefore the demand is there. And also there's another school of thought, there's another thought that I have that is pervasive in our trans community, that we don't trust doctors, so it's actually preferred to use DIY, even though you may have access to an actual doctor in their own in your own area. So there's a very fine line of, is there a barrier to access, or is there a lack of trust in the medical institution? Because those are two very, very different questions. Because if it's a lack of trust, then we should be trying to push people into and do the political activism, educate providers, making sure that they have the ability to serve trans people the right way. We still have a long way to go in that realm, and there's plenty of space to work there. But if you're talking about access, where let's say the worst happens in a state and you happen to live in that state, and it is completely illegal, 100% not like, then it becomes a life or death situation, right? Either person has to move from that state or that country or rely on DIY. So if you are really considering these questions, I think it's really important to ask yourself, is it an access issue or is it a trust issue within the medical communities around you? Because if it's the latter, then you can help build trust as a advocate, somebody who can actually push in a political way.
Yeah. How does that land with you, Stephen?
Sure. I definitely see both sides of it. And personally, my philosophy to most things is just have as robust a skill set and, just widen your ability as much as possible to benefit the people around you. So I've taken up kind of this idea of finding ways to make synthetic hormones, or even developing methods of deriving estrogen the way that we used to, deriving it from horses, or even extracting it from willing donors and that kind of thing. But yeah, obviously, I think everybody would much rather the medical system just work and it not ever come to that. But at the same time, I feel like, got to be prepared for pretty much anything. I do have to run. I would have liked to expound a little bit more on it, but I'm sure you guys will have some thoughts after I hop off here. So have a great rest of the show.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Steven.
do call back. Thanks, Stephen. That is actually A-okay, because we like to try to wrap up at about 90 minutes from the start time, the call portion. So that actually works out well for us. Yeah, but it is an interesting topic. I know
it is
multiple people who have been on DIY hormones, and it was life-saving for them to have access in that situation. But I hear what you're saying, though. I do think there are some people who maybe it is more of an expression of fear or skepticism that around the medical community, and not maybe skepticism, a lack of skepticism with the aesthetic veneer of skepticism.
I think it's so gross how they used to derive estrogen before they were able to do it via the plant-based synthesis, because they used to take pregnant horses, take their urine and extract the estrogen from the urine of a pregnant horse. Ew, no, that is gross. And I'm so glad when I first transitioned, I was like, oh my God, do I have to take urine pee estrogen? I was like, not urine pee, but your horse urine estrogen. And luckily, no, you don't. Like, it's plant-based now and synthesized in a way that is way more humane.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that when did all this stuff start for me? I was 14, so that would make it 2009, 2010 area. It was kind of I don't know if it had changed by then, but maybe the people were still talking about it and it had changed. I'm not entirely sure, but that was still talked about a lot. And it is kind of a little bit of it gives you the shivers or something. But with that, everybody, we've wrapped up the caller portion of our show. So we're going to move on to take super chats. Again, if you want to support the show, it really does help us. We've got quite a team that puts this production together, and that costs money. So if you would like to help, any donations of $5 or more as a super chat, we will read it live on air right here in front of you.
And make sure you say Team Josie, # Team Josie. Just saying.
What? Don't do it. Don't you dare. I need to maintain my throne. No, to be honest, I'd probably
now my plot is revealed. Yeah,
no,
my plot has been revealed. I'm back for a rematch. That's the only reason I'm here.
It is. You just want to win. Ugh.
That's all I want.
All right. Well, let's see the results.
I don't like losing elections.
I believe in the audience. They'll come through for me. I'll start this one. 5 pounds from Sean Isherwood. The limit as k tends to infinity of the sum of n equals k to n equals 2k of 1 divided by N is that an I now? I-N?
That's the what is line? Is it not? Oh man, you're testing my. It's like it's like a trigonometry term, I think, or a calculus term. I can't remember. Oh my god, I've been away from math too long. I feel dumb. I'm sorry.
Look,
I was just
you
my brain is melted out of my ears.
When I was in school, I literally told my advisor, I said, what's the easiest math class that'll give me the credits I need to graduate? And they said this one. And I said, cool, I'm going to do that.
I think LN is a log. It's a log. Yeah, that's it. I guess before you said anything, Jamie, just for the record, I knew it was log. It was just a 2 weeks effort. Jimmy!
Oh man, that's
sorry.
funny.
I heard the joke about the transitioning, so I was just giving you some chances. Okay, it's
oh my gosh.
Giving you some options to dance around with.
Oh my god.
I know they can't hear
that's
me,
fine.
But you know what? It's fine.
I like that the audience just gets to
Jimmy.
watch us argue with Jimmy. Yeah, it's really funny. All right, thank you, Sean.
The voice in my head.
If you confuse me with all of your super chats.
Awesome. Next one. Okay, $10 from Jace DeJong. Could you talk a bit about bisexual lesbians and whether they are valid or not? Seen in a lot of discourse about it lately, and I don't see why it's so divisive what someone chooses to call themselves. Oh my gosh, I have thoughts. I used to consider myself a bisexual lesbian for a while because I wasn't romantically interested in men. And so I was only like slightly sexually attracted, slightly. It was slight at the time. And now I'm bi. I took off the lesbian moniker because I started catching feelings for a guy. And I was like, uh-oh. I guess I'm not as lesbian as I thought. So, yeah, I'm a bisexual person, not bi-lesbian anymore.
Yeah, I see so many people get so upset about people using this, but to me, as a bisexual woman who's, in the spaces of other bisexual women a lot and gay women, I think it's a really, really common experience that women will say, I'm bisexual, but for one reason or another, the idea of having a relationship with a man is off-putting to me, whether that's because, my sexuality is leaning towards women or maybe there's some trauma associated with men or something. And so they're like, so I call myself a lesbian often, but I'm bisexual, and like bisexual lesbian is kind of like the outcome of that. I don't really find that objectionable at all. I think anyone who spent time around men could probably understand why someone might come to that position. Just kidding. I'm just being like sarcastically toxic, but
are you kidding?
I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit serious. Look, I date a man, okay, so I'm not gonna be that toxic, but like, I don't really get the objection. I don't really care what people want to label themselves as. The way I view sexuality, and maybe this is because I'm bisexual, but the way I view sexuality is that I don't think people are gay or straight or bi most of the time. I think people have attraction. And like, if you find that most of the time that's to cis women, and so you call yourself straight as a man, then fine, whatever. But like, if you are almost like 100% of the time attracted to women, but then like one time you think a femboy is cute, I don't think that like destroys your sexuality. I think labels are just meant to communicate general sets of information, and they don't actually tell you much about the person themselves. So when people get upset about an identity label, it's kind of like, okay,
it's I don't know why the Dumb and Dumber thing. So any man who hears bisexual lesbian, just think in your head, so you're telling me there's a chance. That's all you get. Just a tiny little sliver of a chance. That's what that means when you hear bisexual lesbians. That doesn't mean that you have a chance. It's just maybe teeny, tiny bit.
I think that's such an apt comparison. Yeah. Thanks, Chase. $10 from Bomber Fox. I found out the new conspiracy theory from TERFs is trans people are supposedly pulling the strings of the black and brown people, I guess, to hurt the LGB. I mean, I think that just sounds
That's
like
got
an
layers.
absolutely absurd and baseless nonsense, but it's what you kind of expect from like the gender critical crowd. I don't even
So
really
wait,
understand
the conspiracy, I don't like, I'm saying this conspiracy's got layers, right? So it's like, so as trans people, we can pull the strings of black and brown people to hurt. What does it mean when I'm bi? Am I hurting myself? Like, what's going on?
I think maybe the implication is that like LGBT people are the reason there are like BLM riots, or like there were in like 2020. But like, I think it's transparently obvious that the reason these things are happening is because the material conditions people are living under are fucking awful, and they're objecting to that in loud fashion. I don't know what that has to do with trans people at all, but other than maybe in instances of intersectionality, but
yeah, it sounds like some transvestigator bullcrap. That's what that sounds like.
Yeah,
but thank you
100%.
for I'll keep an eye out for it. So thank you, Bomber Fox, for highlighting the new conspiracy where my trans identity is at odds with my bi identity. All right. And I'm also brown. What am I supposed to do? Am I controlling myself to hurt myself? Shit.
Amazing how quick it falls apart. Yeah.
I know, right? So is that 5 pounds? I think that's pounds, right? Is that pounds?
Yes.
Yes, so it is. Okay. I know. I've been learning so much from the Transatlantic show on the currency symbols for other nations. So 5 pounds from Sean. Yeah, Sean Isherwood. There are too many super chats so far. So here's another any group of order 2p for prime p greater than 2 is up to the isomorphism, either cycle or dihedral. Nice. Cyclic or dihedral. Too few?
Yeah.
Oh, it is too few. Not too
many. It is too few. Yeah, wow. Come on. Where are you guys doing?
You know what? In my head, I was hoping for too many. I know. What's going on?
I'm shamed at Team Arden for sleeping on me right now. This is a fierce competition. I'm actually afraid of losing to Josie. If I lose to Katy, I'm like, whatever. She's got an irrational fear of mayo. It's not that concerning. But Josie's actually a powerhouse, so come on, wake up.
Coming for that crown. Coming for that crown.
Never. Never. Thanks, Sean. Whoa, $50 from James Call. Oh, hi, baby. You got stuck in here when I closed the door. You were asleep, must be. Sorry, kitty. This is supportive Liam. Go get him, Tiger. Oh, that's so awesome. That's cool. I hope Liam's still watching.
Thank you, James, for $50. That's so awesome.
Yeah, that's very sweet.
$4.99 from Coffee Mom. Here is $4.99. Can you tell me what to make for dinner, please? Oh my God! Someone else make the decision for once. Love you both, Team Arden. You know what? I was about to give you a choice, but now it's up to Arden to tell you what Coffee Mom should make for dinner tonight.
I mean, if you're a coffee mom, I feel like maybe it's breakfast for dinner. You should have a coffee and you should make yourself like a fancy breakfast for dinner. I love that. So that's what I'm recommending.
I was going to say pasta, but that works.
Thanks, coffee mom.
Appreciate it.
Next. We've got €10 from Vicky. To the last call, learning about NB identities really helped me in my process, feeling valid when not checking all the boxes. Regarding procedures, or checking out the boxes regarding procedures, expression of dysphoria since childhood, etc. Yeah, I mean, I get that Elizabeth is saying that her issue wasn't the validity of her identity, you know, with regards to non-binary people and the validity of non-binary people. But I feel like that's kind of what it amounted to, because her concern was like the changing concept of transness over time and like what it really means to be trans or something. And I do think non-binary people kind of go a length to show like the liberation of gender for trans people and what that kind of does. You know, you don't have to, because there were instances, you know, in what was it, Sweden or something, where you had to get bottom surgery to get documents in the not so distant past. I think it's awesome that we're getting to a place where we're like, oh, what somebody wears or what their body looks like is not really relevant to who they as a person are, which is far more fundamental to, you know, if we respect that, we get far more productive and happy, healthy people in our society. And I'm told there's only 4 more super chats. You know, I'm pretty disappointed in you guys. I can't believe
what's going
you're
on.
Gonna let this. I mean, if I win, then it's great. But, you know, I mean, Josie didn't even get a fighting chance. You know, I don't want to, like, you know, fight someone who can't fight back. That's just terrible.
Oof.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And I forgot the newer rule that nobody actually wins. We're introducing punishments because I have to wear a potato sack or whatever next time Katie and I are on together.
The itchy kind?
Well, maybe it'll be a track. We'll find out. We'll make decisions.
Okay.
The itchy kind, perhaps. But nobody wins if we don't get the total results up to 25 or higher. So if you want to, you know, maybe make me wear something else ridiculous, you better wake the fuck up. Come on.
Yeah. All right. Next one, $8 from Spectacular Snyderman. Team Josie, love Ness forever. Snyderman, I love you. Snyderman is a moderator on my channel, and the Love Nest is the name of my show. So thank you, Snyderman. Always there in a pinch.
That's awesome. I've seen Snyderman all over in the community. I don't know.
Snyderman's great.
If they're fans or whatever, but I'm so excited to have
one
you
of
around.
My favorite people.
Sweet. $5 from the Gay Agenda TM. I love that name. Love you guys channel. I'm not very active, but I absolutely love the work you guys do. Thank you so much.
Aww,
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
It's easy to get a little down about this stuff sometimes, you know? It's so like we're opening ourselves up for potentially really negative calls. And it's nice to when people are like, they really appreciate it, you know? It makes me feel more motivated to come back.
Absolutely. And it's always nice to beat up a transphobe time to time. Rhetorically, not physically.
Yeah.
Take that as you will.
Ooh, we're coming in. Ooh, who's gonna win?
I know, all the super chats are coming in. Loving it. £5 from Missy Prime. I be playing a pirate game as I watch, so here be some loot. Team Arden, me hearties, may the wind always fill your cells.
I love that all the Team Ardens have been Josie's one to read. That makes me feel really good. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you
bet
guys.
It does.
Thanks, Missy. We appreciate it. Next, we've got $10 from Sam B. Thanks for sharing all this trans information with the world. I appreciate you both. Yeah, that's that's what we're here for. I just want to see more people informed so that trans people and cis people can all live better lives together. It's always the goal.
Yeah. All right, next. All right, 20 pounds from Faye. What is your best joke? Team Arden, #anti-slime. I think they know the cadence that I'm gonna read all your Team Ardens. I see what happens.
Yeah, they're
I guess
planning
if you
it.
go
They're
for the
waiting.
queen, you better not miss. I guess if you go for the queen, you better not miss. That's what I'm learning right now.
That's right. I am the queen. Thank you for noticing. Best trans joke. I mean, I liked the James Acaster bit on trans people where he's like, we haven't had a good challenge in a long time, trans people. That was always a good bit. There are definitely more than I'm thinking of.
There's
I know
so
I've seen
many good ones. Yeah, there's so many good like trans jokes out there. I like to, say that, this kind of one that I've done is like, cis women think they have it good, but we actually get to pick our vaginas.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Getting that designer vagina, baby.
Everyone's like, oh, you can't joke about trans people anymore. You can't joke about anything. It's like, no, you just can't make bad, bigoted jokes about trans people.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much good material in the trans experience to make jokes about. Oh, and this is the new one, right? $5 from James Call.
Yeah,
hashtag
yes.
Arden. Yes.
Oh my gosh, it's a blowout. My ego, it's getting smashed.
Sorry to do this.
All right.
It's rough.
Yeah. $4.99 from Logan Fisher. Team Josie, love the show. Keep spreading knowledge and positivity. Heart to you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Logan.
$5 from James Call. Hashtag Team Josie. Ooh, all right.
Gotcha.
Picking it back up.
Gotcha. All right.
Not really concerned. Team Martin's going to come through, but it'll be fine.
Yeah. Oh, is there a tie?
Okay.
Or is there a tie?
There's
or is it even?
More.
Oh, it's still 4-3. Okay. All right.
There's only 3 more.
So
with the current pace, I don't know if we're going to be able to declare a winner or a loser. So we'll see how it goes. Next one.
All right.
We would need 18 more votes.
18 more votes?
So I'm going to assume you guys are not stepping up to plate today. That's fine. Okay, you did it last time.
Yeah.
You or me? I don't remember.
So you got to read. You got to read it.
Oh, it was me? Okay.
Wait, was
$5
it? Yeah.
Okay, Kragma TV. What's your favorite dinosaur-adjacent creature? I'm a fan of Quetzalcoatlus myself. I appreciate that you knew that pterosaurs are not necessarily dinosaurs. I'm pretty sure they're considered flying lizards or something, right? Is there like technical classification? I mean, my favorite dinosaur is Deinonychus. So that is just a dinosaur, but if it has to be dinosaur adjacent, I think maybe the tiny pterosaurs that were in China, those always seemed really cute to me. I would love to see a tiny little flying lizard. I think that would be the cutest thing ever. But, well, probably not. They're probably like actually kind of mean, but whatever. It's fine.
I guess mine is, I'm pretty basic. I love the Brontosaurus because it's just like so cute. I just want to ride one, just like,
Yeah. So cute.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, next one. All right, $10 from the Gay Agenda TM. I've been waiting to start HRT, but I don't know where the best place to get it is. I'm currently looking at Planned Parenthood. Do you guys have any suggestions? Yes, Planned Parenthood's a good place to start. If you already have a primary care, I always recommend going to your primary care first and getting a referral to endocrinology if you can, if it's possible. That way you can stay in the same medical networks, especially if you have insurance. And if you're a veteran, I know I'm going to say it, try the VA. I transitioned through the Veterans Administration, and I highly recommend it for veterans to do because you get your medications pretty cheap. So, yeah. But yeah, Planned Parenthood's a good start, but I always say start with your general provider if possible.
Yeah, I think about super snakes.
Jimmy's talking about super snakes. Super
right,
thanks.
Sorry. I think the only thing I would add to that is I agree with all that. I think is it Aron in the Morn on Twitter has, I think, an informed consent map, or it might not be her, it might be someone else. There's someone out there who has like a map, an interactive map of informed consent clinics, which, to Josie's point, might not be covered or in network, right. Which is why maybe going to your primary might be a better option if you do have insurance. But a potentially more expensive option that might have less institutional hurdles would be finding an informed consent clinic. Yeah. Oh, that's an empty one. Just $5.
$5. €5.
Euros. Yes.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
So this one's £5. got it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, £5 for Ian Isby. I love the channel and the show. Josie has the most infectious laugh. Much respect to Arden, but because she's a guest, Team Josie. Oh, thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. That's really nice.
So sweet. Well, all right. You're getting your votes. I guess that's fine. Yeah, so really quick, what I was just deliberating over from hearing Jimmy in the background and being like, a super what? Super thanks is a new feature they've added where you can leave a comment after the live shows up. So if you're watching this, after the show is done, you can leave a comment with a tip that will let you like color it and put like, or I don't know, sort of like stickers or something, probably like they do in super chats. I don't even know. I haven't seen it yet. But if you want to do it, that's the way you can help.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ian.
And don't forget to give me that point, Jimmy.
$5 from James Call, #Team Poppy, just to shake things up. Hey, if you're going to do Team Cats, my cat Velma is sitting right there. Poppy's not even here. Come on. Wait, is there a way I can show her? It'd be too ridiculous. She's over.
There's
there.
my Doge.
Okay, you saw her. Too much work. She was there, though. You saw her.
Too much work. Too much work.
But with that,
there's...
more. I love pets so much. With that, everybody, though, that has been the last Super Chat, so we cannot declare a winner. And it looks like we ended in a tie. But you know what? Josie and I are just both so awesome that I think that's maybe like kind of fair. So we're going to wrap it up here.
The universe can only take so much.
The audience for showing up. You guys make the show possible. Thank you to the callers, the mods, and Jimmy, of course, for both producing and call screening and doing so much work behind the scenes. And thank you to Josie for being here with me. We really love getting to put on the show. We love having you here. So can't wait to have you back again.
I love being here. This is probably the most fun that I have all week. It's great. And it's just been so great to come and hang out. I mean, I got to have work-life balance, right? Like, this is where I have fun, talking to this awesome community, talking to callers. I mean, what's better?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everybody. It's been real fun, and we will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.